There has been a long line of millionaires and billionaires lining up to go after Elizabeth Warren because of her proposed wealth tax. And the latest is actually Bill Gates. But before we get to him, I just want to remind you guys that we now have a branded segment called Rich Men Cry.
I care. That's it.
It never gets old. That was Leon Cooperman, who is a Wall Street billionaire, and he started crying about the very notion of having to possibly vote for Elizabeth Warren because the wealth tax scares him so much. Now, he's not the only one. He's the only one who's willing to cry on national television, but we even have Bill Gates now, who had a sit-down interview with Andrew Ross Sorkin of the New York Times, and here's what he had to say about Warren's proposed wealth tax.
You know, I've paid over 10 billion in taxes. I paid more than anyone in taxes. But I'm glad to have paid, if I'd had to pay 20 billion, it's fine. But when you say I should pay 100 billion, okay, then I'm starting to do a little math about what I have left over. Sorry, I'm just kidding.
So let me just note that Bill Gates is worth $107 billion. The way Elizabeth Warren's proposed wealth tax works does not indicate that he would pay $100 billion in taxes. That was ridiculous hyperbole. But even if that were true, which it's not, he would still be left with $7 billion. Okay, so it's not like, oh my God, she's gonna tax them to extinction, right? Which wouldn't be so bad. But anyway, that's not what she's doing. That's not what she's doing. And so I'm gonna get into the details of how the wealth tax would actually work in just a minute. But let's go to the next video where he elaborates on his feelings about Warren's proposed tax.
Have you ever talked to Elizabeth Warren about any of this before? Would you? Would you want to?
I'm not sure how open-minded she is, or that she'd even be willing to sit down with somebody, who has large amounts of money.
So later, Elizabeth Warren actually did tweet to Bill Gates and said that she was willing to have a sit-down discussion with him, probably to describe and explain how the wealth tax actually works. But if he's not interested in doing that, it's okay because I'll explain it right now. So how exactly would the wealth tax work? Who does it apply to? It applies only to households with a net worth of $50 million or more, roughly the wealthiest 75,000 households or the top 0.1%. Households would pay an annual 2% tax on every dollar of net worth above $50 million and a 3% tax on every dollar of net worth above $1 billion. So to make the argument that you would lose or have to pay $100 billion in taxes is ridiculous. That's not how this is proposed at all.
Yeah, so now to be fair, with her new Medicare for All proposal, it does go up to 6% for billionaires. So that's 6 cents out of 100. And understand why rich people are freaking out over it. It's not an income tax. It's not the incremental amount of money you made that year. It's a wealth tax, so it's on all of your money. So he has $107 billion, so the math is easy. Let's just treat it as 100 billion, right? Mm. So now it is a lot of money, right? So in the first year of the wealth tax, he'd have to pay $6 billion in taxes. So you can see why he doesn't want to do that. On the other hand, he would have 101 billion left. But my God, what if he had to pay another 6 billion the next year? Okay, he would have 95 billion left. If you've ever done the math on it, no sane person can spend over $40 million. Let alone $400 million, let alone $4 billion, let alone $40 billion. Now I know some of you are at home are like, no, I can't. I can buy mansions, and I can buy jets, and I can buy yachts on top of yachts. I said no sane person, okay? So, and Bill Gates is actually sane. He couldn't come anywhere close to spending $1 billion over his lifetime. So what's all the crying about? And look, Bill Gates is a good guy. I think, and now a lot of the left will get mad at me, but he's given away not only his own money in charity, tremendous amount, half of his money at least, But he's gotten other wealthy folks to voluntarily not give 6 cents away, but 50 cents away. Now, of course, happens over the course of their lifetimes and when they pass on, etc. But still, that's a giant commitment. It doesn't mean he's a bad guy. And in the $100 million thing, he clearly was joking, the $100 billion comment, right? But at the same time, there is this like animosity that is weirdly, in my opinion, unwarranted. If you're willing to give away half your money anyway, why are you so bothered by the 6 cent thing when it would give healthcare to every American? And you don't think Elizabeth Warren is reasonable enough to sit down with you? No, that's crazy talk. I mean, who looks at Elizabeth Warren and goes, no, radical, crazy, wouldn't even have a conversation? No, of course that's not true.
Well, I was gonna argue with you a little bit, but before I do, I think it's actually important to watch the next clip because he gets asked a very specific question that should be very easy to answer, and he has a difficult time answering it.
Yeah, let's watch.
You have been, politely say, public about your misgivings about our current president. If Elizabeth Warren were the other candidate, what would you do?
I'm not gonna, make political declarations, but I do think no matter what policy somebody has in mind, a professional approach is even, as much as I disagree with some of the policy things that are out there, I do think a professional approach to the office, whoever I decide would have the more professional approach in the current situation probably is the thing that I'll weigh the most. And I hope the more professional candidate is an electable candidate.
Like, what kind of answer is that? Right? Why don't you just say, I mean, the appropriate answer is, I'm gonna vote for Warren. Like even what he's applying, like what he's implying there indicates that he would vote for Warren, but he's having such a hard time saying it.
Yeah, and so I was just in New York at a get together with a decent number of wealthy folks, okay? It was a conference, a wonderful conference. It's off the record, so I can't talk about any of the specifics. But in the post game, I want to give you guys context of how there are different bubbles in this country. And in the bubble of the wealthy, Warren is like, they are scared to death of her and totally not acceptable. We see a smart, interesting, progressive person, and some might say, hey, Bernie's more progressive, et cetera. Fair point. But no one thinks Warren is out of control, right? In other bubbles, they do not see it that way at all. I'll give you some more details in the postgame, tyt.com/join to become a member and get the last half hour of the show as well. That's what we call the postgame. But I think that Bill Gates there might have been partly referring to Bernie Sanders. It's hard to make out, but by saying professional over and over again, I thought maybe he was trying to juxtapose Warren to Sanders, meaning like, if Warren's at least a professional and I could maybe vote for her.
This makes me dislike him more. Like,
I'm not defending him. No. I'm just telling you.
And the question was, between Trump and Warren. Like, I don't think we need to like overanalyze it. He had a difficult time saying that he would vote for Warren over Trump. That is ridiculous. That is a ridiculous thing to say. Okay, so anyone who has that much difficulty choosing between the two, I question whether they're a good person or not. Because with Donald Trump, think about that. In that answer, it implies like, protecting my precious money is way more important than anything else, right? And that's not okay. Considering the cruelty of Donald Trump, I mean, you want to talk about lack of professionalism, obviously Trump has that. But like, people have died in cages under his watch. He is a disgusting human being. There's been pain and suffering as a result of him. There's like a genocide happening in Yemen right now, with Donald Trump's assistance. So like, what are you even talking about? And then one other thing I want to note. Look, the thing that frustrates me the most about the statements that are coming from all these billionaires is they frame it as if they've obtained this money, they've accumulated this wealth in this hardworking, fair way. But we know that's not the case. The American labor has spent more in terms of the percentage of their money in paying taxes than the hyper wealthy have. So there's this incredible statistic that I want to share with you. The top 0.1% are projected to owe 3.2% of their wealth in federal, state, and local taxes this year, while the bottom 99% are projected to owe 7.2%. That is insane. The fact that the people at the bottom pay a much higher share of their earnings to taxes, but the wealthy pay, again, 3.2% as opposed to 7.2% that the bottom 99% pay.
Now, again, Bill Gates probably has paid more taxes than any other human on the planet. Bezos is richer than Bill Gates now, but somehow Skates, his company, pays almost no taxes almost every year, even though it's one of the most successful companies the planet has ever seen. And so Gates does not do tax avoidance at the same level as some of the other wealthy do.
This is beyond Gates. My point is beyond Gates. Like,
right.
I don't care what any individual billionaire does. I don't care about how much they give to charity. I don't care about their philanthropic work. We can't rely on whether or not billionaires are gonna do philanthropic work to fill in the gaps that are left behind, the lack of revenue, tax revenue that's generated.
Well, that last part is indisputably true because, for example, people defend the Koch brothers by saying, "But did you know they gave to the opera?" Okay,
don't care.
No, that I couldn't care less if my life depended on it. But they also have given, David Koch has given money to cancer. He's now passed away. He had cancer, so it affected him. Being a conservative, he's like, "Oh, it affects me now. I care, right?" And so it's great that he gave money to cancer, but they systematically, the Koch brothers, have denied a real tax base to the American people that could have given everyone health care. So they just. It's like the mob, you take a lot of money, or in the case of the mob, you steal a lot of money. And in some of the billionaires' case, it's true that they do something similar, right? Mm-hmm. And then you hand out a tiny bit in the parades to the poor. You throw it on the streets and have them, grovel for it and pick it up. And then you say, "Look at me, I'm such a good guy. I gave away a couple of cents," right? But meanwhile, you keep most of the loot. In the case of Bill Gates, I don't think he looted anything. I think he did work hard. He came from a middle-class family. I know he also got lucky. If you read the story of how he happened to know how coding and computers so well, he happened to be one of the very few schools in the country at his age that had a computer in it. Then he went and worked really hard at learning what it was about and learning programming and doing all that stuff. But he was among just a handful of kids who had access to a computer at that time. But that doesn't mean he didn't work hard. But that also doesn't mean that we are distributing taxes in a fair way in this country. We most certainly are not. Thanks for watching The Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.